Firstly, can I say thank you very much for inviting us to give a brief update on carbon labelling. Whoops. Oh, sorry, that's okay. This has changed, that hasn't. What I wanted to do was to go through all of my slides before I've actually started, is to just give you a brief update on the state of the marketplace as we see it. And this isn't just from a UK perspective, it is from a global perspective, but I will explain that as we go. I'm sure most of you know about the existence of the Carbon Trust. We're still very much a mission-driven organisation aimed at accelerating the move to a low-carbon economy, and we do that through a number of things: advice, footprinting, which includes the certification work and labelling that I get involved with, as well as the development of technology and the implementation of technology. I'm not going to talk about any of that. I'm not going to talk about PAS 2050, GHG protocol, PCRs or anything like that, but really just wanted to talk about the communication aspects of the work that we do. And it's been pretty clear actually that there are some major challenges that all of us face, and I stress the us because it's not just you and me sitting here thinking, well, I know the answer, I wish I did. There isn't a simple answer to any of this. One of the things that I've found has come out very clearly from the conversations I've been having over the last 24 hours with people here is around the drivers for communication and disclosure and what those actually mean. And it seems to be clear to me that there are three critical things that start to come out of this. And this came out as much from the workshop session that I was involved with Kevin, as it has from conversations with organisations from all over the world who are represented here today. And that those typically are regulatory drivers. An organisation is encouraged, nay, forced to undertake activity. But that tends to be either localized or regionalized, and that creates some challenges. And if there is the potential to roll that out, great. And the other two are from customers or from shareholders and other major stakeholders, excluding regulation. And the thing that we focus on is the drive from organizations to make sure that they can satisfy the supply chain challenges that they have, and also those customer requests, which we've identified are key issues for organizations in terms of externalities that they do need to manage that they may not have in the same way in the past. But that doesn't mean that any of them, I would say, have necessarily got the answer. When it comes to what labelling and what communication with consumers actually means, there are some good signs coming out of research that we've done. There are also some pretty significant challenges. And that's one of the reasons I flag here that some of this is a view of the fact that talking about this with consumers influences their perception. But nobody is yet convinced that it influences their actual loyalty. And there are certainly questions raised about whether putting a footprint on something means I'm going to sell a single extra item on the shelf. And I think the jury is still out. I think the jury is going to be out for quite some time because there are some other things that start to come into that. It's great to hear that shoppers say that they would stop buying brands if those organisations refuse to commit to measuring. What you then see is what actually happens when they get to the shelf. Do they just go and buy the brand that they've always bought because they trust it, to deliver the experience, whatever that is, that they want, or do they stick to that commitment? The one thing that does actually come out of this, is that the perception is there, and at some stage we think that is going to turn into reality. The key is when and how and what is that going to mean for organisations regarding that communication. we actually feel that there is the potential also for labelling to drive market share and potentially gross margin. And we have seen some very, very early stage views that that is the case. Critical thing here is if you are looking at differentiation via something like this, make sure that that fits in with the product strategy. If what you are doing is mass market value ranges which are undifferentiated in terms of all of their other attributes, why would you differentiate on one thing alone? On something that may not be as relevant to that marketplace as it could. So I think that that is key. When it comes to the labelling itself, actually some of the research we've done recently certainly indicates that consumers have more faith in an external third-party verification of the work that the organisation has done than they do in just that organisation claiming it. So that's something that we see is a good positive sign for lots of organisations and schemes that are out there. However, we do still come back to the challenge of how do you try and get more acceptance from customers, from other stakeholders, as to the value of all of these areas. And part of that, from our perspective, is around building trust. And apologies for those people who were in the stream session that I had yesterday, where I showed exactly the same slide. But really, this just illustrates the sorts of challenges that we see coming out of this. And I know that the left-hand side of the chart is something that is being dealt with very much from the technical side of this forum. In terms of things like PCRs, having said I'm not going to talk about them, I will at least mention them, and standards and so on, to help organisations understand the issues around the actual data and what that means and what they internally can get from that. But the communication and labelling we see as being important as well. And I accept the fact, and we accept the fact, that there is variation in numbers, and there are undoubtedly some challenge in terms of that comparison. But when starting to communicate to consumers, the issues that we see are, what is the meaning of a number? And by excluding numbers and by not labelling, the one thing we do know is it isn't improving consumer education. Those two things have to go hand in hand. At some stage, you have to have both the number and also a lack of understanding, because you can't educate people without the context, but you can't provide the context without starting on that educational cycle. There's no way you can bring those two together at one time. And so we see that as being important. We agree that there are times when people may not want to communicate the number. We agree that there are times when actually communicating the number is more about communicating a message out to the audience than the number itself. And I'm going to use a random example that I think is fairly well known of two strap lines that hire car companies made. The first one was a strapline of "We're number one," and the second one was the competitor that came back to say, "We're number two, we try harder." Both of those organisations included a number. The second one included a message that probably actually meant more than the number anyway. And I think that is something that is important for organisations to start understanding. And we're looking more and more at what those numbers might mean. We're looking at things like general daily allowances, GDAs, as to see how that might impact labelling, and also the communication and education role that all takes. So I think that is something that we're going to see a lot of development on over the coming years as this nascent area, and I include product carbon footprinting in its entirety as that, actually develops more and more. So those are some things I think are going to be important in the future. I know there was one thing that was mentioned specifically in terms of the pre-agenda that came out that many of you may be interested in, This is a statement that was made by Tesco to its stakeholders at the end of January, and I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points from it, because I know that there has been lots of reporting on the fact that Tesco is abandoning its carbon labelling. And 4 things that I'm going to pick up from this statement. The first is, first sentence, they're not abandoning it. Second is, why aren't they? And it's down to the fact that they feel that the information, the audited data, is critical to help them deliver their key targets. And in terms of the supply chain, it's back to finding ways of reducing the carbon emissions in the products they sell. They also know that they have a role in helping consumers and giving them more information in terms of the impact of the products that they buy. They have another key target for Tesco, the entire organisation, to find ways to help customers reduce carbon footprints by 50% by 2020. That in itself shows that they have to be able to deliver on that target, they will have to communicate with consumers around carbon. And the one thing that we do know is that from their perspective, labelling is one of the ways of doing that. And hence the last thing in terms of the summary, which is what they want to do is to continue labelling, to continue footprinting, and we're working with them to find ways of doing that more quickly and more effectively. So I think that is something that is going to continue. There's no doubt about that. And we're looking at a range of things, including PCRs, category rules, category certification, all sorts of things that will help them actually roll out their labelling to a broader range of products as and where appropriate, rather than for us to see carbon labelling from that perspective disappear off the shelves. So I think that is something that is well worth saying. The impetus actually, I think, is still there within a huge range of organisations. Although from a UK perspective, Tesco is probably one of the leaders, it certainly isn't a major change from them. And so really I'd like to conclude on the fact that the Carbon Trust and our certification work continues. There are a number of labels displayed that I'm sure you are aware of. There may be some you aren't aware of, be it against claim verification, footprint verification, the Carbon Trust Standard, which is an organisation certification. And what we're finding now is actually an increase in our activities rather than a decrease. So we've footprinted over 700 organisations, over 20,000 products, and I think we're working at the moment. Currently, we are working in every continent apart from Antarctica. I have no desire for us to find any major clients out there anyway. But we've got, some pretty exciting stuff coming on, and we continue to get lots of demand for the work that we do. And so it's great to be able to come and talk to you and summarise where we see things going, and also for me now anyway to celebrate the fact that it is 5 years since the first product carbon reduction label appeared in public on the first piece of packaging, which in itself I think is a great testament to the fact that there is value here, it is still around, and as a set of schemes and as a business practice, we now start to see that this is becoming more and more important for organisations, and hopefully will continue that way. So, thank you.